What did you say? I breathed into the receiver, my voice breaking as the banking official repeated the catastrophic information. I apologize, Mrs. Thompson, but your retirement fund reflects a zero balance. The money was transferred electronically yesterday. I am Josephine Thompson, 57 years of age. And up until that instant, I believed I comprehended what treachery meant. I had watched my husband Harold succumb to cancer 3 years prior, survived countless chemotherapy sessions and hospital stays, and somehow discovered the courage to reconstruct my existence in Jacksonville, Florida. Yet nothing could have equipped me for this telephone conversation that would demolish everything I held sacred about kinship and faith. The receiver tumbled from my shaking fingers as I gazed at the pile of invoices on my kitchen counter. $180,000. Vanished. Harold and I had preserved every cent for 34 years, foregoing holidays and indulgences so we might retire with dignity. Those funds were meant to handle my healthcare costs, maintain our modest home, and offer stability for my remaining years. Without them, I confronted losing everything Harold and I had labored to achieve. My daughter Emily had been behaving peculiarly for months, though I blamed her withdrawal on pressure from her fresh romance with Travis. She had consistently been reckless, choosing with emotion rather than logic, but robbing her own mother. The notion nauseated me. I seized the phone once more and called her number, hoping for some error, some clarification that would resolve this horror. The number you've reached has been disconnected, the mechanical voice declared, each syllable striking me like a physical assault. I attempted again, certain I had misdialed, but the identical message resonated through my vacant home. Emily had disappeared with my life savings, abandoning me alone with the overwhelming burden of her treachery. I existed the following 3 days in bewildered haze, contacting banks, reviewing account records, and attempting to comprehend how my own child could devastate me so thoroughly. The proof was irrefutable: falsified signatures on withdrawal papers, fraudulent identification materials, and a documentary trail that pointed straight to Emily and her partner Travis Morrison. They had orchestrated this robbery with calculated accuracy, exploiting my sorrow and confidence against me. Harold had constantly fretted about Emily's decision-making, particularly regarding men. She maintained a history of falling for silver-tongued manipulators who offered her everything but delivered only pain. Travis appeared different initially. Captivating, considerate, constantly willing to assist with my technology issues or home maintenance. I should have noticed the warning signs, should have questioned how a 32-year-old man without stable employment could purchase costly presents for my daughter. The investigator handling my case, Officer Patricia Valdez, shared the heartbreaking reality during our second consultation. Mrs. Thompson, I must be frank with you. Situations like this seldom lead to recovery of stolen money. Your daughter and her companion have probably left the state, possibly the nation. Even if we apprehend them, the funds are typically spent or concealed beyond our reach. I remained in that sterile police facility, feeling older than my 57 years, questioning how I would endure. My part-time position at Bright Marsh Publishing scarcely covered essential expenses, and without my retirement money, I faced home seizure within months. The residence where Harold and I had constructed our life together, where Emily had learned to walk and celebrated birthdays, would soon belong to unknown people. That night, while examining old photograph collections, I discovered images of Emily as a child, missing tooth grins, costume parties, Christmas mornings overflowing with joy. Where had my parenting failed? How had my precious daughter transformed into someone capable of such heartlessness? The Emily who once brought me weeds and handcrafted cards could never have stolen from her own mother, particularly not the money Harold had worked overtime shifts to accumulate. Rest became unattainable. I remained awake, calculating my grocery budget duration, considering whether to sell Harold's wedding band for the utility payment, contemplating the unimaginable prospect of relocating to an assisted living facility among strangers. Emily understood precisely what she had stolen from me. Not merely money, but respect, safety, and the future Harold and I had envisioned together. 2 weeks following the theft discovery, as I sat examining another stack of past due notices, my phone chimed with a text that froze my blood. The sender showed as Harold, my deceased husband's name, and the message stated, "Don't worry, we'll fix this and get your money back." My hands trembled as I reread the words repeatedly. Someone was exploiting Harold's identity, executing a cruel prank on a mourning widow. I considered all the fraudsters who prey on seniors, the criminals who exploit weakness and despair. However, something about the message seemed distinct, not menacing or demanding, but oddly reassuring. I dialed the phone number linked to the text, but it transferred directly to voicemail without greeting. That evening I received another message. "I know you're scared, but trust me. Emily and Travis think they got away with it, but they're wrong. Justice is coming." The word sent shivers through me, yet also ignited something I hadn't experienced in weeks: hope. During the subsequent days, the enigmatic Harold provided updates suggesting someone was actively pursuing Emily and Travis. "They're in Miami, living like millionaires on your money. Travis has done this before to other families. Evidence is being gathered." Each message included details that only someone with insider information could possess. I began wondering if Harold was somehow protecting me, directing someone to help retrieve what Emily had stolen. The logical portion of my mind dismissed such foolishness, but grief makes people accept impossible possibilities. I had prayed nightly for Harold to provide a sign showing me how to survive without him. Perhaps this was his response. The messages became increasingly detailed. "Travis Morrison, Social Security number XXX, has warrants in 3 states. Emily is using the name Emma Martinez now. Your money is in offshore accounts, but not for long." Whoever sent these texts possessed information far exceeding what a random scammer could acquire. One evening, while reading Harold's old correspondence, my phone rang from an unrecognized number. I hesitated before answering, fearing I'd hear a stranger's voice pretending to be my deceased husband. Instead, I heard something that stopped my heart. "Mom, it's Michael. My son, my estranged son who hadn't contacted me in 5 years, not since the horrible argument following Harold's funeral when he accused me of favoring Emily." Michael, who had become a federal investigator and relocated to Washington without providing a forwarding address. Michael, whose middle name was Harold, honoring his father. "Michael," I whispered, tears cascading down my cheeks. "I've been monitoring Emily for months as part of a broader investigation. I couldn't contact you directly without jeopardizing the case, but I've been using Dad's name to keep you updated. Mom, we're going to recover your money, and Emily is going to answer for what she did to you." The discovery that my own son had been secretly assisting me while maintaining his cover as a federal agent rendered me speechless. Michael explained that he had been investigating Travis Morrison for months as part of a multi-state fraud task force targeting romance scammers who victimize elderly people. "Travis isn't just some opportunistic boyfriend," Michael said during our carefully arranged meeting at a coffee shop in downtown Jacksonville. "He's part of an organized network that specifically targets widows. They research obituaries, identify women with assets, and then systematically drain their accounts. Emily became involved when she met him through an online dating app that he uses to recruit accomplices." I stared at my son, seeing Harold's determined jawline and serious eyes that I remembered from his childhood. Michael had always been methodical, patient, the type of person who solved puzzles while Emily acted on impulse. "You knew Emily was stealing from me, and you didn't warn me." "I couldn't, Mom. If I had interfered, Travis would have disappeared and dozens of other victims would never get justice. Emily was already too deep in his web by the time I identified the connection. The best way to help you was to let the theft happen and then use it as evidence to bring down the entire operation." The coldness of his logic hurt, but I understood the terrible position Michael had been in. He handed me a thick folder containing photographs, financial records, and surveillance reports. Emily and Travis were living in a luxury penthouse in Miami Beach, driving expensive cars, and dining at restaurants that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. They had stolen from at least 7 other families, accumulating over $500,000 in total. "Look at this," Michael said, pointing to a photograph of Emily wearing a diamond necklace. She bought that with money stolen from a 73-year-old woman in Atlanta whose husband died of Alzheimer's. Travis convinced the victim that he loved her, then cleaned out her accounts and moved on to the next target. My daughter's face looked different in the surveillance photos. Harder, calculating, nothing like the vulnerable girl I thought I knew. She had willingly participated in destroying innocent families, ruining the lives of people just like me who were struggling to rebuild after losing their spouses. The Emily I had raised would never have been capable of such cruelty. We've been building a comprehensive case for 8 months, Michael continued. Wire fraud, elder abuse, identity theft, money laundering. They're looking at federal charges that could mean 15 to 20 years in prison. But I wanted you to be there when we take them down. The coffee shop felt surreal as my son outlined the elaborate sting operation he had designed. Travis thought he was untouchable, moving from state to state, changing identities, leaving a trail of destroyed lives behind him. He had no idea that one of his victims was the mother of a federal detective who had been documenting every crime. "Why didn't you just call me after Harold died?" asked, my voice breaking. We wasted 5 years being angry at each other while Emily was being groomed by a criminal. Michael's composure cracked for the first time. I was proud, stubborn, hurt that you seemed to love Emily more than me. When I learned she was involved with Travis, part of me wanted to let her face the consequences alone. But then I saw what they did to you, and I remembered that you're my mother too. Dad would never forgive me if I let his wife lose everything because of my petty resentments. Over the next 2 weeks, Michael shared details about the investigation that made my stomach turn. Travis Morrison wasn't even his real name. He was actually David Trevor Martin, a career criminal with aliases in 12 states. He had refined his romance scam operation over 6 years, specifically targeting widows between 50 and 70 who had recently lost their husbands. He studies obituaries religiously, Michael explained during one of our secret meetings. Then he researches the surviving spouse through social media, property records, anything that gives him insight into their financial situation. Emily was never his real target. You were. He used her to get close to your family and learn about the retirement account. The sophistication of the scheme horrified me. Travis had played the long game, dating Emily for months while subtly gathering information about my finances, my daily routines, my computer passwords. He had even convinced Emily to copy my identification documents under the pretense of helping me organize my paperwork after Harold's death. Emily knew what she was doing, Michael said firmly when I tried to make excuses for her. We have recordings of their conversations planning the theft. She suggested targeting you because she knew your habits and trusted her completely. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was calculated betrayal. The recordings Michael played for me shattered my last hopes that Emily had been manipulated or coerced. Her voice was clear and enthusiastic as she described how easy it would be to access my accounts. My mom is so trusting, she laughed on one recording. She still leaves her banking information sitting on the kitchen counter. We could clean her out and be in the Bahamas before she even notices. I had to excuse myself to cry in the coffee shop bathroom, overwhelmed by the casual cruelty in my daughter's voice. The Emily on those recordings spoke about destroying my life like she was planning a weekend trip. There was no hesitation, no guilt, no recognition that she was stealing from the woman who had raised her with love and sacrifice. The hardest part, Michael admitted, was watching you suffer while I built the case. Every text I sent as Harold was my way of letting you know that someone cared, that you weren't as alone as you felt. I wanted to tell you the truth, but exposing the investigation too early would have meant Travis could destroy evidence and disappear forever. The federal task force had identified at least 23 victims across 8 states with total losses exceeding $800,000. Travis used a network of accomplices like Emily to gain access to targets, then systematically drained their accounts through forged documents and electronic transfers. Many victims were too ashamed to report the crimes, believing they had been foolish to trust a stranger with their financial information. We're coordinating with local authorities in Florida for the arrest, Michael said. Travis and Emily think they're safe in their Miami penthouse, but we've been watching them for weeks. They have no idea that their landlord is actually an undercover agent or that every transaction they make is being monitored. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Travis and Emily would be arrested simultaneously at their luxury apartment, with federal agents seizing all assets purchased with stolen funds. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records, recorded conversations, digital communications, and testimony from multiple victims who were ready to confront their abusers in court. 3 days before the scheduled arrests, I received a final text from Harold. "Tomorrow we finish this. Pack a bag. You're coming to Miami to see justice served. Michael will pick you up at 6 a.m. My hands trembled as I read the message, knowing that 24 hours would determine whether I lost everything or reclaimed my stolen life. That night I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house Harold and I had shared for 28 years, touching furniture we had bought together, looking at pictures of happier times when Emily was young and innocent. Part of me still hoped there had been some terrible mistake, that my daughter would have a reasonable explanation for stealing my retirement funds and disappearing. Michael arrived at dawn driving an unmarked federal vehicle, his face grim with the weight of what we were about to witness. "Are you ready for this, Mom?" he asked as I climbed into the passenger seat. "Seeing Emily arrested isn't going to be easy, even knowing what she did to you." The 4-hour drive to Miami felt both endless and too short. Michael briefed me on what would happen during the arrest, explaining that Emily and Travis believed they were planning to flee the country within days. They had purchased plane tickets to Costa Rica using false identities, intending to disappear permanently with their stolen fortune. "We found communications where Travis brags about making you his perfect victim," Michael said as we approached the city. "He specifically chose Emily because she could provide inside access to your finances. In his twisted mind, stealing from grieving widows is just business." The Miami Beach penthouse where Emily and Travis were living cost $12,000 per month, more than I earned in 4 months at my publishing job. As we parked across the street, I could see the building's luxury amenities: doorman, valet parking, infinity pool overlooking the ocean. My stolen retirement funds had purchased the lifestyle I could never afford, even in my dreams. "Federal Bureau of Investigation." The shout echoed through the penthouse hallway at exactly 7 o'clock as agents flooded the building. Michael had positioned me in the lobby where I could see everything but remained safely out of the way. My heart pounded as I heard doors splintering and voices shouting commands. "David Trevor Martin, you're under arrest for wire fraud and elder abuse," Agent Patricia Valdez called out using Travis's real name. Through the building's glass elevators, I watched Emily emerge from the penthouse in handcuffs, her face pale with shock and terror. "Michael, how did you find us?" Emily screamed when she saw my son waiting in the lobby. "You're supposed to be in Washington. This isn't possible. Your brother's been tracking you this whole time," Travis shouted in panic as federal agents led him toward the patrol cars. "You told me he was estranged from the family." Michael stepped forward, his federal badge gleaming in the morning sunlight. "Emily Thompson and David Martin, you're both under federal arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, elder abuse, and money laundering. You have the right to remain silent." Emily's eyes found mine across the lobby, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. "Mom, I'm sorry," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I never meant for it to go this far." "But you did let it go this far," I replied, my voice steady despite my breaking heart. "You stole my future and never looked back." The sight of Emily in handcuffs crying as federal agents read her rights should have brought me satisfaction. Instead, I felt hollow, watching my daughter pay the price for choices that had destroyed multiple families. Travis remained defiant, cursing and struggling against his restraints, but Emily looked broken and defeated. "Mrs. Thompson," Agent Valdez approached me with a thick folder. "We've frozen all assets purchased with stolen funds. Your retirement money along with funds stolen from other victims will be returned within 60 days. Travis and Emily are looking at federal sentences of 15 to 20 years. Michael stood beside me as we watched the patrol cars disappear into Miami traffic, carrying away the daughter I thought I knew and the criminal who had corrupted her. She made her choice, Mom, he said quietly. Emily knew exactly what she was doing when she helped Travis steal from innocent people. The penthouse apartment yielded evidence of Emily and Travis's lavish lifestyle. Designer clothes, expensive jewelry, electronics, and artwork, all purchased with money stolen from grieving families. Federal agents catalogued every item, preparing to liquidate the assets for victim restitution. Your daughter provided detailed information about 23 victims, Agent Valdez explained. She kept records of which families had the most assets, which widows seemed most vulnerable, and how much money they could potentially steal. This wasn't impulse. It was systematic predation. The evidence of Emily's willing participation shattered my last hopes for her innocence. She had actively participated in identifying and targeting vulnerable families, using her inside knowledge to help Travis maximize his thefts. My daughter had become a predator, viewing grieving widows as opportunities rather than human beings. 6 months later, Emily and Travis pleaded guilty to federal charges rather than face trial. Emily received 7 years in federal prison, while Travis was sentenced to 15 years with additional charges pending in multiple states. The judge ordered full restitution to all victims plus damages for emotional distress. I sat in the courtroom as Emily made her statement, watching her struggle to explain actions that had no justification. I was lonely and desperate for love, she told the judge. Travis convinced me that rich people wouldn't miss the money, that we were just redistributing wealth. Her words rang hollow. The victims' impact statements revealed the true cost of Emily and Travis's crimes. Families forced from their homes, elderly people choosing between medicine and food, widows contemplating suicide rather than face poverty. Emily's selfish choices had created suffering that extended far beyond stolen money. Your actions represent a profound betrayal of family bonds and societal trust, the judge stated during sentencing. You specifically targeted vulnerable people who were grieving the loss of their spouses, showing a level of callousness that demands significant punishment. Michael testified as the investigating agent, his professional demeanor masking the personal pain of watching his sister destroy herself. When Emily looked at him during cross-examination, he met her gaze without flinching. The defendant showed no remorse during the investigation, he stated. She bragged about stealing from her own mother and expressed excitement about fleeing the country with stolen funds. The courtroom was filled with victims and their families, people whose lives had been shattered by Emily and Travis's greed. I recognized the look in their eyes, the same bewilderment and betrayal I had felt when discovering my retirement funds were gone. We were all connected by the trauma these two criminals had inflicted. Emily and Travis faced the complete destruction of their reputations and futures with federal convictions that would follow them forever. Travis faced additional charges in 3 other states as more victims came forward, virtually guaranteeing he would spend decades in prison. Emily's betrayal of her own mother became a central element of the prosecution's case, painting her as someone willing to destroy even family relationships for money. Their luxury assets were seized and sold at public auction with proceeds distributed among the victims they had systematically targeted. The case became a landmark prosecution that led to stronger federal protections for elderly fraud victims and mandatory reporting requirements for financial institutions when suspicious transactions involving senior citizens were detected. Michael returned to his position in Washington, but we rebuilt our relationship stronger than before, united by the shared experience of seeking justice for Emily's crimes. I deposited the recovered funds into a new, more secure account and decided to volunteer with organizations that help fraud victims, turning my painful experience into a way to help others who had suffered similar betrayals. Sometimes justice comes from the most unexpected places, and family bonds, even strained ones, can still protect us when we need them most. Though some betrayals cut so deep that forgiveness becomes impossible, and the only healing comes from watching those who wronged us face the full consequences of their choices.